All right, got some more people trickling in, so we can go ahead and get started. It's 3:02. So, hello everybody. Welcome to our August Sustainability Series event, which is a webinar put on by Solar Oregon called How to Go Solar and Storage. We have some fantastic guest speakers with us today who I'm going to introduce in a little bit. My name is Eric Laprie. I'm the Sustainability Education Coordinator. And our Sustainability Series is basically our monthly employee engagement opportunities where y'all can log on and learn about all different aspects of sustainability. So today we're going to be talking about solar and storage. You might have noticed last time we talked about food waste, or we talked about single-use plastic prevention. We've talked about food waste prevention, your transportation options. So we try and switch up the topics every month. We also try and switch up the formats. So you might have a webinar, you might have a guest speaker or a panel. We might play games, do quizzes and things like that. So hopefully throughout the year, you can find something that is interesting to you and you can come log on and join us. You'll notice that today we are in a Zoom webinar. This is a little different than our normal Teams format. So I just wanted to make sure to go over a couple of housekeeping things first. First is you'll notice that there is no video or microphone option for you. So you don't have to worry about accidentally coming off of mute or anything like that. So that's super helpful. If you have a question for our panelists, you should go ahead and put that in the Q&A section. There's a little, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A with 2 chat bubbles. That will go directly to our facilitators. And so it's possible that when you put your question in the Q&A, that it could get answered on the spot within the little Q&A section, or it could be answered by our presenters after the content of the presentation is over during the official Q&A section. But go ahead and feel free to put your questions in there at any point. If you have comments or reactions or resources or anything else that you would like to share with our fellow audience members, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. So one goes to our presenters, the other one goes to the audience, and you can feel free to use the chat as much as you'd like. This event is being recorded, and so we'll be posting the recording when it becomes available online to NeoGov. It'll just be part of our sustainability learning library that we're building, and so when that becomes available, we'll let you know. And then lastly, I'm going to be signing off in half an hour. I have some interview panels that I'm sitting on. So my colleagues in the sustainability division, Robin Strawn, who's our sustainability manager, and Carolina Martins, our sustainability specialist, are also on the call, and they'll be here to help answer any questions that you have after I sign off and to provide tech support to our presenters. So with that, I would like to introduce our guest speakers that we have today. Leading this workshop will be Grace Hardy and Zach Snyder from Solar Oregon. Grace is a program manager at Solar Oregon, which is a nonprofit focused on expanding solar energy in Oregon and Southwest Washington through education, outreach, and advocacy. Grace has a background in residential energy efficiency and local climate action planning, and believes solar is a great tool to increase community-wide sustainability and resiliency. Grace is joined by Zach, who is also a program manager at Solar Oregon. Zach has been working in the solar field for 4 years and is here to answer all of your questions during the Q&A portion of this event. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to our presenters. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much, Eric. All right, so welcome everyone. You are at Solar Oregon's How to Go Solar and Storage webinar, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about solar and hopefully answer any and all questions you might have about this process. Today, we are going to be going over the basics of how solar works, talking about what might make your home right for solar. We'll touch on energy storage as an addition you can make to your solar system. And we'll go over incentives that you can use to finance your solar system, and finally dive into how you can get started on this whole process if you're interested. So my name is Grace, and as Eric said, I'm a program manager at Solar Oregon. Solar Oregon is a 42-year-old nonprofit. We got started in the 70s advocating for solar as the ideal energy source. And we've changed a lot over the last 40 years, but we're still very focused on education, outreach, and advocacy. So as part of that, we do webinars like this one on how to go solar. We also have a number of events per year. Coming up this October, we have our annual solar winery tour and our annual Go Zero tour, which is a tour of zero energy homes in Oregon. And so you can check that out on our Eventbrite, and I will share that information with you in just a moment. We also help support Solarize campaigns, and these help whole communities go solar together. And finally, we like to focus on creating community through peer-to-peer education and storytelling. We are a member-based nonprofit, so our work is made possible by the donations and support of our members. If you are a member already, we'd like to thank you so much for being part of the Solar Oregon team. And if you aren't a member and are interested, we're going to put some links in the chat. And these links will take you to our website and to a number of other links that we'll mention throughout the presentation. So we encourage you to check those out. If you do become a member, you both support our work and get some discounts to events like the Solar Winery Tour and the Go Zero Tour. If you are interested in our work, you can follow us on social media and Eventbrite at Solar Oregon and find out all of the upcoming events and webinars that we have going on. We'd like to give a huge thanks to the Energy Trust of Oregon. The Energy Trust of Oregon is an independent nonprofit. They provide resources to help all sorts of stakeholders make their energy use more efficient and affordable. And they don't quite serve the entire state, but they serve clients of major utilities that are listed on the screen. And they're supporting this workshop today. So a huge thanks to Energy Trust of Oregon and all the support they provide. As Eric mentioned, we want to answer all your questions. We will get to them at the end of the presentation. So if you have any throughout the presentation, please put them in the Q&A box and then use the chat to provide comments or reactions, anything like that.
Hey,
I'm going to...
it looks like the chat might be disabled for attendees. And since you're the host, you might be able to enable that on your panel in the little like caret arrow where it says chat. Might be options, just FYI. Otherwise, apologies, folks, if you can't use the chat.
All right, I just changed the setting, so you should be able to use the chat now. If anyone feels brave, they can test that out to make sure it worked. Amazing.
You might want to put those resources in there one more time. I don't know if folks are gonna see those.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know, Zach. So I'm going to launch a few quick polls. These just help us get to know you all a bit better, know who's showing up to these webinars. So I will launch them. And if you all could just take a quick moment to fill these out, that would be greatly appreciated. I also see that we have 65 participants now, which is awesome. All right. Looks like most of you have filled out the poll. I'll end that poll. And then there's a couple more questions I'm going to send out. Right. And that poll. Then I think there's one more poll. And then we can get into the more interesting stuff. Right, I'm seeing that most of you aren't familiar with the incentives, so I'm excited to be able to share that information with you all today. I'm going to end the final poll. And now we can jump into the more exciting part of the presentation, which first, how does solar work? This is a diagram of a typical solar system. Here we have the photovoltaic panel or the PV panel, and this is probably what you first think of when you think of solar. This panel is not floating in the air here. It's either roof mounted or ground mounted. And this panel intakes energy from the sun and converts it into DC electricity. Your home and the utility grid both use AC electricity. So before that electricity can be used, it has to pass through what's called an inverter or a microinverter that transfers the AC electricity or the DC electricity into AC electricity. Once it is in AC electricity form, it can enter your home and power your home. If you are producing more electricity from the solar panel than you are currently using in your home, that excess electricity will flow through your utility meter and into the grid. On the other hand, if you are producing less electricity from your solar panel than you are using in your home, you can import electricity from the utility grid through your meter and into your home, like you would typically do if you didn't have solar. So as you may have noticed, there can be electricity flowing both ways through your utility meter, and this is called a bidirectional utility meter. If you don't have solar right now, you most likely have a one-directional utility meter where electricity flows from the grid through your meter and into your home. But if you install solar, a solar contractor will help you install a bidirectional utility meter so you can both import and export electricity from the grid using your solar panel. There are two main types of inverters. The first is a more classic inverter, and these are usually installed next to the home's electrical panel and can be seen on the left. The second is a microinverter, and these are much smaller and are installed under each solar panel and can be seen on the right here. Both of these inverters do essentially the same thing. They have minor pros and cons depending on the type of system you're installing and your specific circumstances. So we recommend you talk to your solar contractor and they will help you determine which type of inverter is right for you. There are also two types of ways you can mount your solar. The first is a roof mount, and these are more common, especially in dense urban environments, because they require less space. The second is a ground mount, and these are more common in rural environments where there is more space. And the benefit of a ground mount is that you don't have to worry about the condition of your roof or the possibility of needing to re-roof. However, there are additional costs with ground mounts. You have to run a copper wire from the ground mounted solar panel into your home, and that copper wire can be quite expensive. And there's also additional labor costs required to trench that wire into the ground. So both of these options are viable depending on your space and the property you're installing the panels on. So again, talk to your solar contractor and figure out which option is right for you. Net metering is a really great tool that we have. It allows you to utilize the benefits of your solar panel throughout the entire year. So on both of these graphs, the orange bar represents the electricity your solar panels are producing, and the blue bar represents the electricity you are consuming from the grid. So during summer months, you are producing more electricity than you are consuming from the grid. So you're producing a net positive amount of electricity and exporting that into the grid. During the winter months, you're producing less electricity than you are consuming from the grid. So you have to draw some electricity from the grid. Net metering allows you to use credits that you earn from the electricity you export during summer months to offset the cost of the electricity you have to import from the grid during winter months. As I mentioned here, the credits carry over from summer to winter. However, they do not carry over year to year. But the great part is the year starts in March, and that's right when things start to get sunny in Oregon. So that is designed so that you can build up all of your credits during the summer months and then use all of those credits during the winter months. And then the year restarts every March. Overall, solar panels are a great way to reduce your energy bill. If you have enough roof space, you can potentially cover 100% of your energy costs, and you'll still pay, give or take, $11 or $12 a month for interconnection with the grid. But overall, you can find huge savings on your energy bill from a solar system. So an important thing to consider is whether your home is right for solar. And I encourage you through this section to think of your own home and how each of these things might apply to your property. The first thing to think about is the system size you want to install. The main thing you want to think about when considering system size is how much electricity you consume. As I mentioned, net metering credits carry over from summer to winter, but they don't carry over year to year. So if you install this massive solar system on your property that produces way more electricity than you consume in a year, you're going to have lost credits at the end of the year that you won't see cost savings on. Instead, you want to size your system to fit the average amount of electricity you are going to produce in a year. You also want to take into consideration other factors like available space, your budget, and aesthetics. A system size is measured in kilowatts. And in Oregon, the average residential system size is about 6 kilowatts, and this is around 18 to 20 panels. However, system size can vary widely and can be anywhere between 6 and 35 panels. So next you want to look at solar access. This is how much sun resource you are going to receive throughout the year. In this diagram, it shows the path the sun takes throughout the year from summer solstice to winter solstice. As you can see, this path is angled towards the south because we are in the northern hemisphere. And so southern facing roofs are going to be the best location for solar panels because they will see the most sun resource throughout the year. East and west facing roofs also definitely work. North facing roofs we don't recommend because especially during winter months, it isn't going to see much sun resource. You also want to think about shade on your property and how that might impact your solar potential. This, though, is often hard for a person to self-assess. So we recommend you talk with a solar contractor and they can assess your property and the impact the shade will have on your solar panels. Another thing to look at is roof complexity. So on the left here, we have a more complex roof with different sized faces in different orientations. And on the right, we have a simple roof with 2 faces. The simple roof is the better option because it allows for a more continuous solar system, and this reduces costs during the installation process. Another important factor is the age and condition of your roof. This is because when you re-roof, you will need to take off your solar panels and then reinstall them. With metal roofs, they have quite a long lifespan, so this is rarely an issue. However, with asphalt shingle roofs, the newer is definitely better. Energy Trust incentives require at least 10 years of roof life, so we usually say that is the minimum roof life to install solar on your roof. However, if you can have a longer roof life, that's even better. In general, if you have an old roof, we recommend you wait until after you re-roof to install solar. What's underneath your roof may also affect your solar potential. Your roof must be strong enough, not because the solar panels are heavy, but because they increase the wind shear acting on your roof. Newer homes typically have pre-engineered trusses, which are shown on the left here. And these crossbeams are effective reinforcements and are more than sufficient to support a solar system. Older homes and some newer homes may have rafters, as shown on the right here. And these are single beams extending under the entire height of the roof from eave to ridge. Rafters may also be sufficient for solar unless they span too far of a distance. If you have rafters that do not lie within conservative span limits, some jurisdictions, such as Portland, may require you to pay an engineer to analyze the strength of your roof, which can cost additional money. And then if the engineer determines that your roof is not strong enough, you may have to add reinforcement. And most solar contractors will help you through this process. We do want to note, though, that even if your roof doesn't meet the permitting requirements, your roof is likely still fine for solar. These permitting codes just tend to be quite stringent. So if you go through all of this with a solar contractor and determine that your roof or home isn't fit for solar, don't fret, there are still ways to access clean electricity. One option is a subscriber-based community solar system. And this is when a developer builds a large solar system and then a project manager finds subscribers to pay into the system and receive credit on their electricity bills. This allows people who can't install solar on their property, including renters, to switch to renewables and save money on their electricity bill. If you are below the income threshold, you can save up to 40% on your bill. And we recommend that you go to OregonCSP.org, which is one of the links I posted in the chat, to find an existing community solar installation and subscribe to it to start receiving clean energy credits on your bill. Another option is community solar investments through Oregon Clean Power Co-op. And I've also posted a link to this in the chat. This is basically like community crowdfunding. You can live anywhere and invest in any system in Oregon, and then you receive payments back over time. The co-op and its members have used community investment and other financing sources to install solar on schools, churches, libraries, nonprofits, and local government buildings throughout Oregon. So this is another great way to support the installation of solar throughout Oregon. Everything I've described so far is just solar. Now I'm going to dive into the storage component, which you can add to your solar system. A huge benefit of storage is that it provides energy resilience. So if you only have a solar system installed, if the grid shuts off, you lose electricity in your house, along with everyone else. However, if you have a storage system connected to your solar system and the grid shuts off, you have the ability to keep your lights running. So for example, in this photo, the grid shuts off, most of the buildings lose their power, and this one building that has solar plus storage is able to keep its lights running. Energy resilience is important because grid shutoffs are becoming more common. The most common reason the grid shuts off is due to storms and squirrels. Public safety power shutoffs are also becoming increasingly more frequent, and this is when a utility intentionally turns off the grid to reduce the risk of wildfire. Cyber attacks have not yet happened, but are a possibility. And then Cascadia zone earthquake, or the big one as people call it, is estimated to shut off the grid in Portland for up to 6 weeks and even longer outside of Portland. When I'm talking about solar and storage, to clarify, I'm talking about solar on the roof or ground mounted and storage in your garage or shed or wherever you may put it. And the storage is a battery. There are many different types and brands of batteries. We are a brand agnostic nonprofit, so we can't recommend any to you, but you can talk to your solar contractor and they will help you pick out a brand and size that works for your system. When thinking about how big of a battery or how many batteries you want to think about if you want a partial or whole home backup. So for example, if you had, let's say, one battery, you could partially back up your home. And if you purchase more batteries, you could back up your entire home. And this is an example of what a whole home backup might look like. So if you're interested in solar plus storage, sizing your storage depends on what you want to power and for how long. For example, you could choose to power a refrigerator, several lights, and a laptop for a couple of days. Or if you took away one of those circuits, let's say you no longer wanted to power the circuit of lights and you just wanted your fridge and the outlets that would power your computer, you could power those then for longer. Or if you added additional components, like you also wanted to power another circuit of lights in your home, then you could power those things for less time. So the more you add, the less time you get, the less you have, the more time you get. Adding additional batteries can increase the amount of power or how long you can power it, but it will also increase system price. Solar will allow you to recharge your batteries during the day. However, a typical residential solar system is not big enough to recharge your batteries faster than you are likely to deplete them. So don't expect an infinite period of autonomy. Once you understand your needs, your contractor can help you properly size your system to meet those needs. And the last thing I'll talk about in terms of storage is the essential loads panel. So when you're choosing what systems or what circuits within your home you want to power in the event of a grid shutoff, you want to choose circuits that you can put in your essential loads panel. And when I say circuit, I mean an electrical circuit. It might have a set of lights in your home or a set of outlets, and those will be in your circuit breaker right now. Because it's difficult and expensive to divide circuits, you want to work with what you already have in your home and choose out which circuits you want to put in your essential loads panel that will be backed up by your battery. So now that we understand the technology and have learned how to assess our solar potential, let's look at the money. How much does the solar system cost? The great news is that costs have fallen significantly over the past decade. There also are three main incentives that you can use to finance a solar system in Oregon. The first is a federal tax credit. The second is a statewide rebate, and the third is an incentive through Energy Trust of Oregon. So the solar investment tax credit, which is a federal tax credit, was just actually bumped up to 30% through the Inflation Reduction Act and extended throughout the next 10 years. So this is a dollar per dollar incentive that you will receive on your tax bill. So 30% of the net cost of the solar system will be returned back to you. The state solar plus storage rebate can cover up to 60% of your system cost, up to $5,000, whichever one is comes first. And then the Energy Trust of Oregon incentive provides a cash incentive of $600 if you are a PGE or Pacific Power customer. Energy Trust of Oregon also has a Solar Within Reach program. So this is a different incentive. You either get the standard incentive of $600, or if you're income qualified, you get the Solar Within Reach incentive. So if you're a Pacific Power customer, this is a $1 per watt incentive up to $6,000. So that's up to a typical 6 kilowatt system. You'll get the full $6,000. If you're a PGE customer, it's a $1.3 per watt incentive up to $7,800. And the income threshold for a household of 4 residents is $112,860. And this changes based on how many residents are within the household. The statewide solar plus storage rebate provides up to $5,000 for a new solar system and up to $2,500 for a new storage system. If you are low or moderate income homeowner, and this income threshold differs from the Energy Trust of Oregon threshold, so you want to look at whether you qualify for both of these. So if you qualify as low or moderate income for the Oregon Department of Energy rebate, you will get $1.8 per watt of installed capacity, up to 60% of the net cost, or $5,000, whichever is less. If you are not considered low or moderate income, and you are also eligible for an electric utility incentive, like the ETO incentive, you will get 20 cents per watt of installed capacity, up to 40% of the net cost, or $5,000, whichever is less. And then finally, homeowners that are not considered low or moderate income and are also not eligible for an electric utility incentive. For example, if you're outside of PGE or Pacific Power, you'll get 50 cents per watt of its installed capacity up to 40% of the net cost, or $5,000, whichever is less. So that was a lot of numbers to throw at you. Throw out a few more, but hopefully this table makes them all come together and make a bit more sense. So this is a sample budget for 2 PGE customers. The one on the left is a non-income qualified household, and the one on the right is an income qualified household. Both of them are installing a 6 kilowatt system that has a base project cost of $20,000. And I'll make a quick side note that this is not what you should expect the base cost to be. The base cost can vary widely based on if you have to get additional structural enforcement in your roof, if you have to re-roof, all sorts of different factors can impact the cost. But here for this example, we're gonna start with a baseline of $20,000. So first we'll apply the Energy Trust incentive. For the non-income qualified household, that incentive is $600. And for the income qualified household, that incentive is $7,800. Next, we'll apply the Oregon Department of Energy rebate. So for a non-income qualified household, that's $1,200. And for the income qualified household, that's $5,000. And that puts the out-of-pocket cost to the customer at about $18,000 for the non-income qualified and about $7,000 for the income qualified. And finally, we apply the 30% federal tax credit, and we end up with the final cost to the customer before energy savings over the lifetime of the solar panels, about $13,000 for the non-income qualified household and about $5,000 for the income qualified household. This is a very similar budget, but for a Pacific Power customer. And the only difference here is the Energy Trust incentive for the income qualified household is $6,000 instead of $7,800. And so the total cost to the customer ends up being a bit higher. So after all the information, you might be ready to get started and wondering how to do so. The great news is Energy Trust of Oregon has a whole list of trade ally solar contractors that you can choose from. And we highly recommend you hire these solar contractors because Energy Trust of Oregon rigorously qualifies them all. They are familiar with all Energy Trust design and installation requirements, and they are approved to offer Energy Trust incentives. So a link to find that list of trade ally contractors was posted in the chat. You also can go to the Energy Trust of Oregon website to request 3 highly rated trade allies to contact you with an analysis and quote for a solar project. And this is completely free and very easy to use. So this is a great option to get started on your solar process. And I'm gonna repost those links in the chat just in case they got buried from earlier. You can find both those links. So finally, once you've selected your installer and signed your contract, the installation process begins. This is a turnkey service. So once you sign, your contractor handles the rest of the project. The installation itself typically takes just 1 or 2 days for a residential project. However, before installation begins, your contractor must obtain permits, apply for the Energy Trust incentive, and apply for net metering with the utility. There also might be a waiting period for your contractor to schedule you on their construction calendar. So there might be a few months before your solar panels are actually installed. After the system is installed, your contractor will manage all inspections and the grid interconnection, and this can take a couple of weeks. Once your utility approves your interconnection, your system will start producing clean electricity and you are good to go. So that is the end of our presentation. I will now, looks like there's a good amount of questions posted in the Q&A box. Thank you all for doing that. I'm going to pull out some of these and have Zach help me answer them. So the first one by Dinesh is, what has changed in solar technology in the last 5 years? Zach, do you want to answer that?
That's a great question. Oh, gotta put my phone on silent. Yeah, there's a ton of great questions. Grace, that was great, and looking forward to digging into some of these. What has changed in the world of solar technology in the past 5 years? In terms of what you're going to install in your home, the biggest thing, it would be storage. So that's not the actual solar panels, it's the batteries. Batteries are increasing in terms of the number of options you have. There are different makes and models of batteries coming into the market, and the price is decreasing rather rapidly, much like solar was a decade ago. Solar is, compared to a decade ago, now a mature technology, and what was being installed 5 years ago, the main thing that has changed is the wattage of the panel. So that's how much power on average it will produce. And that might have changed from about an average wattage of 320 or maybe 300 watts up to 400, sometimes 450 watts. But by and large, the technology is relatively mature right now.
Thanks, Zach. Let's see, there's a question from David Dunham. Can you share the difference between third-party companies that offer, in quotes, free to homeowner solar versus homeowner paid solar system installed by a contractor? Zach, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so David and Steve have both asked this. And what you're talking about is a solar lease. And so the difference is that when you buy a system that you own, you pay for the entire system cost up front, you foot that bill, but then you own all of the energy it produces. When you have a leased system, you don't own the system on your roof, but you don't have to pay for it either. And you do get some energy savings, and the company that is giving you the leasing the solar to you, will retain some of that savings that will allow them to recoup their costs and gain a margin. And so the advantage to a lease is that you don't have to pay the upfront cost. If that's an issue for you and you're looking for ways to own your system and avoid an upfront cost, you can also look at financing. And there are some good financing options for solar. Of course, then you have to pay a little bit of interest, but it's up to you to weigh the pros and cons between leasing, financing, and just buying outright.
I see a next question by Julie McLeod. She asks, is it true that if there are already a lot of homes in my neighborhood with solar, that the utility company, for example, PGE, may not have the capacity to accept additional electricity from new solar panel installations? Thanks, Julie, for this question. Zach, do you want to answer this as well?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. There are some really great questions, and so keep on putting them in the chat. This is, the answer to this is a little bit technical. And the short answer is yes, if there are a lot of homes on your block, that can affect whether your transformer that feeds you and the other folks on your block might need an upgrade. And if that's the case, then unfortunately, it's the person who exceeds the capacity is the person who needs to pay for it. So your first neighbor who got solar didn't go over the capacity of the feeder, the grid locally, and they didn't have to pay for that upgrade. The second person didn't, the third person didn't. But if you're the person who goes over that capacity, unfortunately, the utility may put you the bill for that, and that could be quite expensive.
Thanks, Zach. There's a question from someone anonymous. what happens to excess energy produced year to year? So as I mentioned with net metering, credits don't carry over year to year. That electricity you're producing, though, is still going into the grid. You're just not receiving any savings from the excess electricity. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Ricardo asks, I've spoken with PGE about the trend in other areas of the country where utilities are now charging an adjustment/minimum fee for whoever has solar and either not paying or selling power to the grid. Have you heard what plans are for such?
So the question is, I certainly can't give an answer. That it's really the whims of the folks who make policy and the whims of the politics around this. You're probably referring to California recently went through a process of examining its net metering process, and net metering is, as Grace described, that system that allows you to account for energy that you export to the grid. And all states have net metering programs. Oregon's got its own, California has its own, well, not every state, but pretty much every state. And all of them are examined usually in the legislatures every single year. And usually bills don't pass that are introduced to create changes to those net metering programs. There is, of course, the risk that there could be changes, but for a long time that has not been true. And of course, the conversation in California has brought that up in other areas. Will there be changes to net metering programs elsewhere? Right now, there is no real strong conversation about that in Oregon. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball when it comes to policy of the future, but no expectation that that would change anytime soon.
All right, thanks for that answer, Zach. There's a question from Steve. We have started the solar process. That's awesome to hear, but not installed yet. As long as it is installed after today's date, do we get this 30% solar credit that was just passed instead of the 26% tax credit? So the Inflation Reduction Act actually backtracks to the beginning of 2022 and will give anyone a 30% tax credit that has installed solar within 2022. So you should be good to go with the 30% tax credit. There's another question from Ryan. Are there any contractors or companies that your organization would recommend? This is a very expensive project and it would be easy to choose a bad company that doesn't have your interest in mind. So as I mentioned, we highly recommend any of the Energy Trust trade allies. These are all rigorously qualified and are trustworthy contractors. So if you go to Energy Trust of Oregon website that we post in the chat, you can look through these trade allies and they have ratings. And this is a good way to ensure you're getting a good company. Cody asks, is the roof quality evaluated when someone comes out to provide estimates or determine how many panels could work? Zach, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, different contractors have different processes for quoting systems, but it falls into two general flavors. And one of those is what I would call the old-fashioned way, which I'm partial to, though it doesn't necessarily mean it's better than the other. And that is someone will come out to your roof after you get, well, first when you call, they'll ask you for your address, they'll pop that into Google Maps, and they'll take a look at your roof and just see if there are big trees or buildings that would shade your roof, or if your roof looks otherwise like it just wouldn't be good for solar. And they'll tell you that right over the phone very quickly. And that might be, you know, half of all roofs that a solar company might look at. They might just say, no, it's not even worth sending someone out. If your roof looks good, they'll send someone out, they'll get up on the roof, take some measurements, sometimes with a little device that reads the amount of open sky available to each part of your roof, and draw up a little quote for you on the spot and present it to you. During that time on the roof, they kind of can just, kick the roof with their boot, see how much of the sand from the tile comes off and just look at it. So that's when they'll take that assessment. Other companies will they won't send someone to your home right away. They will use a software suite produced by a growing industry of remote sensing technology. And they'll produce a preliminary system design for you, preliminary quote. And if you're interested and you sign that contract, then they'll come send someone out. And if they decide, oh, there's actually more roof than we thought, we could go bigger, or actually the roof is not in good shape and we didn't realize that when we sent you the preliminary quote, that's when that will be discovered. But you kind of have to talk to your contractor and figure out which process they use.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I appreciate all the questions you're all posting. This is great. So we have another from David. He asked, the example for cost you placed in the tab earlier, was it for 6 or 12 panels? So the example I posted was for a 6 kilowatt system, and this can be, usually it's about 18 to 20 panels. Panels differ in how many watts they are sized at. So it's not necessarily a specific number of panels, but yeah, usually about 18 to 20, and it's for a 6 kilowatt system. We have a question from Julie. Can batteries get you through the whole 6 weeks of no grid after Cascadia? It's a great question. Zach, do you want to answer it?
So the short answer is that you should not expect that. Is it technically possible? Could you build a system that will get you through 6 weeks? Yes. And in fact, there is a building that we recently had a showcase at in Portland. It's an office building, and it is the world's largest living building. And that has an autonomy period of potentially 100 days. And so that's very impressive. Of course, we'll see how it actually operates during the Cascadia system, because 100 days is pretty, could be optimistic. In general, you should expect that one battery might get you through, if you have a standard amount of electrical usage, anywhere between 4 and 8 hours-ish. And you would have to add multiple batteries to either get a whole home backup like Grace was talking about, or to extend that.
Good question. Greta asks, will you go over how to calculate the payback period so you can figure out the true cost of solar? Zach, do you want to talk about that as well?
Sure. We don't put that in our standard budget, but basically it's a very simple calculation. You just look at the overall cost and the average savings per year. And so the way you can get that information once you get a quote, basically. Sorry, I say it's a simple calculation, but it's something that your installer will take into account the orientation of the panels and their tilt, their angle, and the local climate. So if you're in Western Oregon versus Eastern Oregon, for example, and how cloudy it is. And from that, you can estimate how many kilowatt hours of electricity the system will produce on average. Of course, that will change from year to year because you'll have sunnier years and cloudier years. So it is an average. But then from there, your installer will be able to tell you what you'll save on average every month. And then you just divide your total system cost by that.
We have another question, or a question from Marla. How much less effective are east or west facing roofs than a south facing roof?
So west facing roofs are often A-okay. Yes, they will produce maybe a little bit less energy than directly south facing. East facing, a good general way to think about this is that the Energy Trust of Oregon only provides incentives for solar systems that can take advantage of a certain called TSRF of the, that's the total amount of solar resource compared to if the panel were oriented perfectly due south directly at the sun. And you have to have, I believe it's 75%, 80%. I should know the actual number. But if you're above that, that means that you are in the good zone. If you're below that, that means you could probably do better in terms of panel placement. East-facing roofs ride that line, and some east-facing roofs are not good enough, as the judge of Energy Trust says. Some of them are good enough. West-facing roofs are almost always good enough. So the difference is not super great, but there is a little bit of difference between east and west. And really, the thing that makes east-west facing roofs less effective is if the tilt of the roof, so imagine you have a Swiss cottage, it's a very high tilt A-frame, and it's east-west, that will reduce the number of hours during the day in which the panels will be receiving sunlight. And that can reduce the effectiveness, especially of east-facing roofs.
Dinesh asks, how does the warranty work?
So there are sometimes multiple warranties. There will be the warranty for the solar panels. That's usually a 25, 30-year standard warranty. The warranty for the inverter, standard warranties used to be 10 years. Now, sometimes there are standard 30-year warranties for inverters. Sometimes you have to buy an extension for the warranty, and it's just a few $100. And the inverter is the part that will most likely fail. So I would say that extending the warranty on the inverter is probably a good idea if you have that option. And there are also sometimes warranties on the workmanship from the installer, as well as a warranty from some installers called a production guarantee. And that is where they say, look, we guarantee that your system will produce 95 to 97% at a minimum percent of what we estimate your system will produce. So you know that we're not fooling around with the numbers. We stand by our estimate, basically, of how much energy your system will produce. And that could be potentially a fourth warranty, essentially. And when you have something go wrong with your solar panel, your inverter, your installation company will be the one who you'll call them up, say, look, I'm having trouble. They'll come take a look at it, and then they will contact the inverter manufacturer or the solar panel manufacturer and handle the warranty details and take care of that for you.
Great question. We have a question from Amber. Does the solar contractor usually help with incentives, or do we need to figure them out ourselves? So I'm going to try to answer this, and Zach, correct me if I get anything wrong, but the solar contractor will help you with the incentives. It's turnkey service. So once you sign off with your solar contractor, they will handle the rest, especially if they're a trade ally contractor through Energy Trust. They know the system of getting the Energy Trust incentive. Zach, do you have anything else to say on that?
I'm so sorry. I was reading the amazing 16 remaining Q&A questions and I kind of spaced. I think I'll just summarize what I think you probably said, which is that the solar contractor handles everything except the tax credit. And that's something you do when you file your taxes. Was that what you said, Grace?
Yes, I left out the part of the tax credit, but so that was a good addition.
Yeah, great.
Ricardo asks, are there any businesses in Oregon offering used EV/hybrid batteries for storage of solar energy? It's an interesting one. Zach, you have anything on that?
Used EV/, yeah. So this is something that is not available in Oregon, but I happen to be at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory conference on emerging technologies in the clean tech sector back in Colorado a few months ago. And I met somebody who is starting a startup in Canada to do exactly that. And they've got partnerships with Tesla and a couple other major auto manufacturers, because there is, you have to have a battery in exceptionally high condition for it to be functional for EV use. So as soon as it falls below that, you have all these batteries being generated. And so it's a very smart idea. And there is somebody working on it that may be able to sell you that sometime in the future.
Vitali asks, I have heard that financing at 2% versus 4% will add 5,000 to 7,000 to the total cost by lender to contractor. Is that usually true?
That's a great question. And I don't know the math off the top of my head, and I can't do it in my head. Apologies.
Greta asks, how long can you expect the panels to last and not need replacing? And so the warranty, typical warranty is 25 years, but solar panels, we think, can last longer than that. That's kind of a question that's still being researched. We know that the production usually degrades at about 1% per year, but they usually have quite long lifespans. And yeah, anything else, Zach? Awesome. Amber asked to send a link out of this video recording afterwards. We will post this to our YouTube and send out a link with the slides. So you all should get an email with that. Someone anonymous asks, are the income-based incentives based on the adjusted taxable income? Zach, do you know the answer to that?
That's a great question. I believe that it is your adjusted gross income. I don't know that for a fact, but that is certainly the most sensible way on which to base that. And I don't know how else you would have an objective measure of that people wouldn't quarrel about it.
So we're getting right up to 4 o'clock. We're happy to stay on and keep answering questions because there's so many great ones in the chat. Robin and Carolina, do you have any preference on if we should shut this off right at 4 or keep going?
Well, you're welcome to keep it going if you'd like. I don't know if you have an option to also download the questions and include answers to that with an email to us or to the attendees. We'd be happy to pass that on to all of the attendees if that works better for you. It's up to you.
I'm happy to stay on for a few minutes if you want to, Grace.
Yeah, sounds good to me. All right, we have a question from Ryan. Is the solar investment tax credit refundable or non-refundable?
That is non-refundable.
Question from Dustin. Based on the multiple incentives/rebates, is there a resource at one of the associated organizations that can help determine which ones help a household maximize the financial benefit?
So solar contractors are experts at this, and they really know you, depending on your utility, and they've ferreted out, because they are competing with other companies, that if they don't know this, other companies will figure it out. So it's really, no companies really make any errors there, getting you as much money as they can get you.
Another question from someone anonymous. If a solar system is not grid tied, can the owner still receive the tax credits and the Oregon incentives? I believe the answer to that question is yes. Is that correct, Zach?
Sorry, I missed the condition. What's...
If a solar system is not grid tied, can the owner still receive the incentives?
So energy trust incentives are only for grid tied systems. I believe that I don't actually know for the state rebate and the federal incentive. That's a great question. There are so few off-grid systems installed that I don't even know the answer to that question.
It's rare to catch Zach not having an answer, so good job. Ricardo asks, in some large installations abroad, solar farms are partnering with green roof MFRs to use the shaded area to generate habitat and growing spaces. Have you seen anything like that coming up in Oregon? So that's a great question. I actually was just reading about agrivoltaics today, and it's a great technology. And coming soon, there is going to be a groundbreaking for a new agrivoltaics research center near OSU. So that is a really great thing happening in the future. Zach, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, the solar agrivoltaics is exciting. There are it's kind of in a lot of like test phase. So that's when you have these like pilot projects cropping up there, and there are some cropping up. And I think if I'm reading this question right, to the question also is about green roofs, and so maybe that's talking about actual on the roof you have like a garden, and there are certainly examples of that, mostly in commercial buildings, and there is a synergy between photovoltaics and green roof, and that's partially I think for shading reasons, though I'm less of a plant expert, and also just water management, runoff from panels, I think, but it certainly is talked about.
A question from also anonymous. If you have a townhome connected to another home, will that be a deal killer for incentives?
So townhomes can be tricky, but it depends partially on the metering situation, and sometimes I think townhomes might have just restrictions, and it's a little bit flavored like an HOA in terms of what you can do on the roof, but I don't know hard and fast rules, and I know that some townhomes, I just know that townhomes are, you're less likely to be able to install solar on them, but I don't think that it's impossible in all cases.
David asks, would installing the solar panels increase my homeowner's insurance for any reason?
That's totally up to your insurance provider and your insurance policy. And often when you install something, you'll call them up and let them know, and they'll incorporate that in policy. Some insurers may allow you to just not incorporate it if you just don't want to have it covered by insurance. One thing that is tangentially related, I guess, if your policy were based on the assessed value of your home, then the answer would be no, actually, because solar does not increase the assessed value of your home. That's an incentive that Oregon has for solar installation, though of course that doesn't that's separate from the actual sale of the home, sale price. So up to your policy, I think.
Ricardo asks, as a Tesla Powerwall is only available with a Tesla solar roof per their website, are there other major brands engaging in only with these? Conversely, are there alliances among manufacturers that provide a great incentive in the area?
Yeah, so one of the hazards of Tesla, which is great in so many ways, their marketing, they start these PR campaigns, and sometimes they're confusing, or just they get into this whole PR bubble kind of world. The article you're referring to, they made a decision that they install their own solar installations and batteries, but also other solar installers can install a Tesla Powerwall. It is very common to get a Tesla Powerwall with solar panels from a different manufacturer, for example. And so you certainly can do that. It's just that Tesla, at their Tesla installation shops, will only sell you a paired system like that. In terms of that kind of brand consistency behavior from manufacturers, that does show up sometimes with energy storage systems. There are subcomponents of a battery system. And so you might have the charge controller separate from the inverter, depending on whether that's AC or DC coupled. And you could, mix and match things, but it's really, I think there's a strong advantage to going with the one brand if you're looking just at your energy storage part of your system, just because there's things are being worked out in the market right now, and in terms of interoperability, it's not like there's clear standards right now, and so it's just, I think they're designed for each other, you know what I mean? But that's within an energy storage system and its components. Between an energy storage system and solar, you can totally mix and match, and that's done all the time.
Anonymous attendee asks, they're curious about the sample budget, the 6 kilowatt system at $20,000, and that is higher than the $2 per kilowatt hour example.
Yeah, I'm happy to fill in that detail. If you're talking about the graph that we showed, that Grace showed, that is the aggregated solar price, and that is the price for residential, commercial, and utility scale. And that's going to be lower than just residential per watt, because the cost of utility scale, because you're working at such large scale, it's lower cost per watt than residential. And that's part of the reason. Also, the budget, really take it with a grain of salt, because it is very hard to quote an exact price for a system. It depends on so many things. And so it's by definition a little bit of a guesstimate. And we're making a number of assumptions for that budget.
Renee asks, different subject than we're currently on, how does the community solar program work in terms of typical costs to become involved and discounts you may get from becoming involved?
Yeah, so there is no cost to get involved with community solar, and so that's different from the utility programs where you pay extra to get your electricity that they sell you offset by renewables. This, you actually get a bit of a discount regardless of who you are. And if you fall into their low and moderate income category, you get 40% energy savings on average. And that is on average, so you won't see that necessarily on every single bill, but it is still a great savings. And if you are in that category, there's also no cancellation fees. They waive potential penalties for, in not fitting perfectly into the expected behavior as a subscriber. There are some cancellation fees, for example, but they're pretty modest if you don't fall into that income category.
Anonymous attendee asks, do the incentives only apply to the solar install, or does it apply to the whole system to include accessories like batteries also? So I'll answer about the state rebate. They have a rebate for solar systems and a separate rebate for storage. And the rebate for storage is up to $2,500. Zach, do you want to answer about the other two?
Yeah, Energy Trust of Oregon doesn't yet have a storage incentive, but there was a bill passed in 2021 that creates a directive for them that allows them to create incentives for energy storage. And so I don't have a crystal ball again, but maybe sometime in the future. The tax credit, there are people who may tell you that the tax credit will apply to the storage system, that this tax credit will apply to a roof if you re-roof at the same time. The tax credit will apply to a Bentley. I would say only trust a tax expert, and I'm not a tax expert. And there are people who do claim the tax credit on an energy storage system. And there are installers who recommend that. I would recommend going over the head of your installer and asking a tax preparer what they think, because there's a little bit of ambiguity in the tax law, and it's kind of up to you how you want to approach that.
Jan, I see your comment asking for advice, it seems, on new construction with mostly passive solar home connected to the grid. If you want to post any specific questions you have in regards to advice on that, we'd be happy to answer them. I also see a question from Cody. If you have to foot the bill for the neighborhood box, will the incentives, specifically the 30% tax, account for that cost as well?
That's a great question. And another tax question, which I'm, again, unqualified to answer, but I would say certainly no. As an unqualified non-tax professional, that would not apply to that, unfortunately.
Right, I think those are all of the questions.
I want to say a special thank you to Grace and Zach, and I appreciate that you even stayed long to answer almost 40 questions from our participants today. I know we have probably about half of our total participants are still on here, and so I just want to thank them for joining us as well. It sounds like you will be following up with this presentation as well as the links. So is that what I understand?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we'll get a recording of the presentation, which we'll add to our NeoGov Learn system, and it will also be shared out with you as attendees.
One note there is, I don't think everybody registered on Eventbrite, and so we can send things out to Eventbrite folks, but I think it's Eric or you guys might be able to send it out to everybody else.
Excellent. And I know we're going to also be posting on our intranet site with some of these resources as well. So that should reach all of our county employees, even those who couldn't attend today.
Great. Thanks so much. This is really great and such a great list of questions.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all.